Hello, everybody. Welcome to the STOBG Innovation Expo series behind-the-scenes conversation. Today, we are talking to BuildVision. We're joined by Ben Lyddane, COO of BuildVision, and our own Dave Hamilton, Senior Vice President of Construction Procurement Solutions. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Awesome. Afternoon.
Afternoon. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Ben, I really want to start with the question of what was the problem that you guys saw in the industry that you wanted to solve?
Sure, it's a great question. I think being in construction for about 10 years prior to coming on and doing this at BuildVision, we've all lived through inefficiencies in construction and kind of just the grinding, halting nature of the supply chain of construction. So mainly related to procurement, we were very focused on the little kind of micro inefficiencies, but then also some of the overarching business model issues. There's misaligned incentives in procurement. There's subcontractors buying equipment that may or may not be technical experts. There's kind of this amalgamation of problems, and we view it as as not one specific single thing, but really like 50 plus kind of these micro smaller problems that all create a lot of friction that we see every day.
Right. Well, certainly something that I think the industry as a whole is looking at, right? We're all trying to solve, I think, that little problem, that little nuance, and how do we get an advantage in the game? Dave has been working on this for, his whole career in some way or another. But from a technology standpoint, Dave, we started looking at something like 5 years ago, maybe it was, when we started looking at different solutions from a technology point of view.
Yeah, we really struggled with trying to get data across the entire organization, across our family of what's now 14 different builders, and how to amalgamate and aggregate all of that information. And I couldn't believe it whenever Mike Powers called me, who's Ben Lindale's partner and also his boss, called me a couple of years ago and said he had cracked the idea, and he was able to bring us BuildVision. And what the inception was fantastic, being able to give us that aggregation right across the whole industry, across our company.
That's really great to hear. So tell me a little bit, so how did you go about solving the problem, building the team, building technology to get us to where you are today?
Sure. So it started back like a year and a half ago with Mike and his co-founder, Christoph, and really kind of were the construction brain in Mike and then the engineering brain in Christoph, who started building the platform. But there's a really big focus on kind of closing the loop of the quotation process and the procurement process. So right now there's a lot of different kind of open-ended pieces in the problem where you're working with many different vendors, many different manufacturers. Information is spread all across the internet. And we're trying to take all of that unstructured kind of web of information and turn it into something structured that's useful for your organization. So I'm sure if you can imagine like a set of construction plans, there's a million different MEP engineering firms. They all have a slightly different flavor of how they build different construction documents, and taking all those unstructured pieces of information and turning it into something that Dave's team can look at in a coordinated, structured way, and then relay that information to the vendors is a big focus of ours on a daily basis. I'm always kind of thinking of how can we turn what might have taken 100 steps before into 5 steps now?
That's great. And Dave, the vision of having a centralized procurement department has been a vision of the organizations for a long time, yours specifically as well. Talk a little bit about how the platform of BuildVision got you, let's say, quicker into getting to where we are now and actually establishing a standalone business. So talk about how BuildVision helped speed that process up and make it more efficiently, and how it's leading to the success.
I would say, Rob, looking across the couple of years that Mike and I have been working together, being able to understand the lack of integration of the data and the unstructured nature of it, as Ben has said as well, has been so difficult for us. And I think what really cracked it, and I'd like to hear what you have on this, Ben, but is really the AI and being able to take what is a very intuitive platform like Building Connected, which we use all day, every day across the entire organization, and building another portion onto the end of that, almost is what it feels like, that really helps us ingest a lot of the documents that are already in Building Connected, bring them across into BuildVision, and then take the information and aggregate that together. I know I'm using the word aggregate a lot, but it's a very, very important definition for us to have is that viewpoint across. And I want to really, hammer home the 2 words that Ben mentioned in passing, and I think they really need to be emphasized. One is efficiency, and the other is frictionless. And those are 2 things that we keep looking at as we build out and as we keep talking about BuildVision and see where it applies across the organization, those two are very, very important.
And I think one of the challenges, especially when you're looking at you're talking about like larger equipment, HVAC equipment, there's a lot of nuances that are in there. And obviously you have to eventually meet a specification. Talk a little bit about how you make sure that you're meeting the exact specifications. So what's on the drawings, what's in the specifications. You know, a lot of times we know that when the subcontractor gets to it, that's when all these nuances kind of fit. Is it a left-hand valve assembly? Is it a right-hand valve assembly? So where do those, that's like the nitty-gritty part of, it's not just buying a refrigerator out of Lowe's or something from Amazon. This is very specific things that have to be tweaked. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it's actually closer to like a fighter jet than it is to like a SKU or SKU number that you're buying something off of Amazon. Like some of the machines that Dave's team purchases can have literally a million different parameters of options and accessories that they're looking at. So how do you come up with the exact right solution? So part of that is in the effort that their team puts on from an engineering perspective of using the expertise that they have to send out bids in a way that they're getting structured data back. So what I mean by that in more detail is like today in the construction industry, everyone's probably seen a new email in their inbox with the subject title of a project that you've never seen before, never heard of. So to get caught up to speed, you're opening up the files. I mean, just finding out where the schedules are, where the item's located on the plans, where the specification is. There's a lot of duplicated effort happening across the industry. Every vendor is doing that over and over and over again. So using a combination of our software to kind of structure that data, put it into a viewable format, and then Dave's team with an engineering lens viewing it kind of puts it together so that when you start to get the bids back and take a look at them, you're really being an expert. You're not just looking at a PDF and hoping for the best kind of thing. It's a lot more. In some ways, it actually enables you to do the engineering work.
I think what Rob was asking as well is around the scope sheets, right? So we've developed, 85 unique scope sheets?
There's actually today like over 550 templates now, yeah. So we're up to a lot of, honestly, any piece of equipment you can think of in the industry, we almost have a template for it, and we have a detailed version and a basic version of it. So depending on the project, where you are in the project, you can also really kind of meet the bid request.
So the templated ones that we did, the 85, that's ones that we have created,
yeah.
And then yours are the additional
Correct.
ones on top.
Yeah.
So could you just talk a little bit, Ben, around some of that I heard recently is AI and being able to scrape from manufacturers' data sheets and being able to understand those a lot deeper?
I'll give a couple examples. So one thing of why it's so important is that these nuances that you mentioned, there could be one line item on a set of construction plans that really dictates an entire project. So for Dave and his team to go in and create these templates and scope sheet questions that the vendors are answering, it's giving you the information back that you actually need to get the correct bid answered. So that's part of it. The next thing with AI that's really cool is we're taking the schedule notes and the specification notes and turning those into scope sheets. So if you had a schedule note that said like, a roof curb is required on a rooftop unit, all of a sudden that becomes a scope sheet questions, and you're getting the response back from your vendors, whether or not that thing's included. It's not buried in a PDF somewhere. And then really, too, when you're comparing pricing, you really are looking at apples to apples. It's not this apples to oranges comparison.
Well, that's the other key to that is that, so, okay, all right, if the supplier isn't, providing it, which may not be a standard thing, at least it won't fall off the scope sheet from the contractor supply it. So you can at least go down there and say, it's not a piece of equipment, but it has to be provided. It's provided, but it's subcontracted at this point. And so that piece of the puzzle is a real nice connection too. And it seems like that's eliminating some project scope risk as well.
Yeah, scope gap. It's
gap
what we've looked across.
Closing the scope gap.
And this is just enabling us. BuildVision has really lifted us tremendously into a whole other arena of not being able to, or you could do it, but it would be very laborious.
Sure.
And the data would be outdated, and it's lifting that all.
Well, I think that's the other key to AI. As the AI starts to learn more and to find out what the typical questions, answers, things like that, it's going to start refining it too. It's going to be even more efficient as the process goes along. So here's one for you. So as you've gone through this journey of developing where you are today, what are some of the surprises that have hit you?
Well, even 18 months ago when BuildVision was started, LLMs and ChatGPT, I think 3.5 was out, and it was still pretty new. And to what we're seeing now with O1 and some of the new models, like the large language models have come a long way in a pretty short period of time. It's something that we really 18 months ago, like we're not an AI company, but we're using it in our application because it's able to solve a lot of the problems that we're trying to solve. So I wouldn't have planned on becoming this AI kind of tool now, and it's been kind of cool to see that happen.
That's great. So tell me about some of your successes, like milestone successes to date, and like what is your next vision of a milestone success?
So it's been fun. We've kind of gone through the full project life cycle now, and I think that's been awesome to see. So starting with a set of construction plans, going through an entire bid process all the way to where equipment's actually purchased and closing that procurement loop. So, a year ago, we were just a dream of like, we'd love to have a bunch of quotes on the platform. And now it's like, no, there's real construction projects that Dave's team's looking at and that are getting procured using the software. It's pretty cool to just see it like almost like A to Z. Everyone loves to go, point at all the buildings they've created. It's kind of our little version of that in the procurement world.
That's great. Well, we look at these things as like a really like a symbiotic kind of relationship, right? The fact that the platform that you've built is really helping us build the business and become more efficient. How do you see our involvement in the development of your company and the relationship and the value to the relationship that we bring?
Yeah, we couldn't have done it without a partner like Structure Tone realistically. And it's just the day-to-day interaction, because like as much as you can have an idea for something and want to go make it, until you're getting direct day-to-day feedback on users of the application, you can't refine it well. So Dave's team's been critical to being able to give us like, here's the specific thing, exactly what we need for this specific process. And that lets our engineers team go build it to specification. Because at the end of the day, if we're building the wrong thing, it doesn't help anyone out. So like we have to be building the right thing for you, and then you guys have to be involved with us to make sure the right thing is getting built. So I talk to them every day essentially about how we can improve the application. It's great.
I think right from the initial get-go, there was very much of a conversation between Mike Powers just before you came along, Ben, but it's been the same with yourself, where we looked each other in the eye and said, I need you, and he would look at me and say, I need you. So, there was very much this partnership idea of understanding each other's reliance just to be able to get this all off the ground and make sure that the concept actually worked. Beginning to see the concept work, you talk about successes, it was just amazing to see those first couple of bids come in. I know it doesn't sound like a huge deal, but seeing those first $30,000, $100,000 bids come in, scope sheets being filled out, naturally vendors reacting the way that we want them to in the marketplace, and them having to go through a learning curve, a little bit of a change here. They're not just sending out their usual, quote to a broad scatter. They're really having now to go in and answer these questions and think about it. But the reaction from them, I think, has been very positive, and I would say successes, and something that has been a surprise, maybe in a sense, has been how people have embraced it.
Yeah, I'd say the savvier the vendor too, the more likely they are to love it, because they're just putting their equipment in the best light possible. So Dave's team asks a question, if they can have the right answer, then they're there at the right time. So it does work for everyone, even downstream with the vendors. Sometimes it does take them a little bit to get on board, but once they're on board, usually they're pretty excited about it.
I think it's great. Look, when we decide to invest in a company, whether it's physical dollars or our time and an effort, it really goes back down to the team, right? So we have to have belief in, yes, the solution, but also the team, and that this interaction, this partnership is going to actually work. And I remember when I first met Mike, he brought me into the room and talking to Mike about like, okay, so how's this information getting in to your system? And Mike said, we're doing it manually. I'm like, oh boy, well that's gonna, but here's the key to that, right? It was the commitment from you guys to go from, that's how you had to start, right? And where you are now, where it's so intuitive, automatic, the connection to building connected is one piece of it, but the technology it was built into, you're now scraping the information from the drawings and all that stuff. That to us is the sign of a great partner, and I think what's going to make you successful going forward. So it begs the question to say, okay, so within the BuildVision context, what is your next major achievement? What are you focusing on?
Yeah, we're hyper focused on increasing the volume going through the platform. So that's more projects, just doing it more often. And I think the better the product gets, the easier it is to do it more often. So I have a big thing on my wall at my house that's make Dave more efficient, because that's all I want to do every day is just make his team better, because the better his team can get, the more the product works. So, it's nice to hear you say some nice things about how far it's come along. I think software, it's never over, and I think we'll be working on it forever. Hopefully, that's the plan, and just like constantly trying to improve it. That's the goal.
And I'm assuming that the expansion from HVAC equipment, electrical equipment, to some of all the other pieces of materials that we're focused on as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, today mechanical and electrical they're challenging, but they're low-hanging fruit, because in that challenge there's a lot of opportunity. So the closer you get to a commodity, the less likely it would be to run through like a full procurement process. But beyond mechanical and electrical, there's many other pieces of equipment that do require it as well. So I think the sky is the limit as far as what we could procure. What your team could procure.
I would say lighting's a very much the next progression, and I think even building out some of the AI to be able to begin to do that automatically is going to be interesting, so that it picks up on symbols, and then a verification, trust and verify, as you always remind us, as far as the ingestion into BuildVision, that things are always verified. But
and also running the other direction too. So like, as important as it is for you guys to run efficiently, we're also on our kind of next iteration, we're going to spend a lot more time focusing on the vendor responses, because it's critical for them to be able to use it extremely easily, and for them to get value out of it too. Because at the end of the day, you really need that symbiotic relationship with everyone in the construction supply chain.
I think what's been very interesting too for us has been the scale. So we've just talked about light fixtures. You're right down to one component that's pretty small. Whenever you think of AC units, we're not just out there concentrating on the bigger projects and the larger AC units. BuildVision has that capability of being able to be agnostic, as it were, to the size of the unit, just because of quantities and digitization, et cetera. It just makes it so simple, so we can scale that across any size or shape of project, and the large ones and the small ones together. So it's not as though we're just concentrating on very large projects, where you talk about low-hanging fruit, that some people have been very focused on those. But for us, as a view, as we have always said, we do 1,200 projects a year. 70% of our projects are under 2 or 5 million, whatever way you want to slice it. And that's really where we see BuildVision being tremendously powerful, because it's able to grab all of that information, all of that data, right across even the smallest of projects, and aggregate that all together for us. That's going to be tremendous.
Perfect. Well, we're certainly excited to see what happens next with BuildVision and the partnership that we have with us together. Thank you both for joining us again. Join us next time at STO Building Group Innovation Expo's Behind the Scenes.